Most of us start our day with coffee and end up wondering why we're tired or really wired, or sometimes both. But here's the truth. We're one of the most sleep-deprived societies in history. According to sleep scientist Matthew Walker, 2/3 of adults in developed nations still fail to acquire the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Chronic sleep loss has become so normalised that we've forgotten what feeling truly rested really means. But to cope, we've turned to caffeine. Caffeine is one of the most widely consumed psychoactive drug on the planet, with over 2 billion cups of coffee consumed every single day. Globally, coffee is now a $100 billion industry, second only to oil, the world's most traded commodity. It fuels our mornings, powers our afternoons, and quietly disrupts our nights. Today, we're going to be diving into the science behind caffeine and sleep, how caffeine tricks your brain chemistry, what's really happening when you crash in the afternoon, and how it interferes with melatonin at night. To wrap it all up, we're going to finish off with science-backed sleep practices that's going to help us to sleep better and feel more rested. This is going to be backed by some of the science-based recommendations in Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, so that we can sustain our energy, improve our focus, and wake up actually feeling refreshed. Let's start off by understanding why we actually feel tired. This is something called sleep pressure, and it starts with a little molecule called adenosine. Think of adenosine as your brain's sleep pressure gauge. Every waking minute, adenosine slowly builds up in the brain. The longer you've been awake, the more it accumulates, and therefore the sleepier you feel. Now, during deep sleep, your brain starts to clear out adenosine, essentially hitting reset. By morning, your levels are low again and you feel alert. But here's the key. If you don't get enough sleep, not all of that adenosine is cleared. In other words, you wake up with leftover sleep pressure. And that's one reason why it's very common to wake up and still feel groggy. So where does caffeine come into this? Well, caffeine hijacks the adenosine receptor. It doesn't eliminate adenosine. It simply blocks how adenosine communicates and builds up sleep pressure in the brain. A bit like sticking a fake key into a lock so that the other one can't fit. So when we drink caffeine, adenosine can't communicate to our brain that we feel tired. You feel alert and focused, but this is simply a chemical disguise. Meanwhile, adenosine keeps on building up in the background. Then a few hours later, as that caffeine slowly starts to wear off, adenosine floods the receptor, and that's where you feel the crash. The half-life of caffeine can be anywhere between 5 to 7 hours, meaning half of it is still in your system that long after drinking it. Let's say you have a coffee at around 3 p.m. A very significant amount of the caffeine is still going to be in your system at around 9 to 10 p.m. And this is quietly delaying our drive to sleep. But unfortunately, the problems don't end there. Caffeine doesn't just keep you awake, it actually changes the structure of our sleep. Studies show that caffeine consumed even 6 hours before bed can reduce our deep non-REM sleep by up to 20%. And this is really bad because this is the phase responsible for physical restoration and memory consolidation. And since caffeine also delays your melatonin release, your body's natural sleep hormone, it also shifts your circadian rhythm, meaning you'll fall asleep later and feel less refreshed in the morning. I speak about the importance of circadian rhythm in one of my other videos, and I'll put a link to that below. In short, caffeine can make you sleep less, and the sleep you do get is shallower and less restorative. So, what can we actually do about this? Matthew Walker's recommendations for sleep hygiene are refreshingly practical, and here's some of them. Number 1, try not to consume caffeine 10 to 12 hours before you intend on going to bed. For a lot of us, that means our last coffee should be before noon. And of course, like everything, a lot of us vary person to person. So for some people, that will be even earlier. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but maybe it's time to invest in some good decaf coffee. Number 2, of course, keep a good sleep schedule. If we wake up and go to bed at routine times, we're really building a strong circadian rhythm, which is really going to help us to be healthier and more focused and alert, and also get better sleep. Our circadian rhythm thrives on regularity. And yes, unfortunately, that does still mean getting up at the same times on weekends. As I always say, live your life. A weekend here and there isn't going to be the end of the world, but we're speaking in terms of trying to optimize our health. Number 3, dim the lights in the evening. I've spoken about this in my video on circadian rhythm as well, and how light from above can trigger specific receptors in our eye that are very sensitive to blue light and therefore disrupts our melatonin and in turn impacts our sleep. Having warm lighting and lighting that is physically low in our environment can really help to communicate to our body that it isn't daytime by limiting the amount of overhead light we're getting into our eyes, because our body is used to the day-night cycle, and when it gets light, it also has a lot of blue wavelength light in it, our body thinks it's essentially the sun and therefore thinks it's daytime, and this is going to impact our sleep and circadian rhythm. Number 4, keep a cool bedroom. Of course, to get deep and restorative sleep, our core body temperature has to drop, and if we're under really thick quilts, this is not actually helping, even though you might feel like you feel cozier and more sleepy, because it's keeping our body hot, and this doesn't allow us to get an optimal night's sleep. Around 18 Celsius or 65 degrees Fahrenheit is a good goal. Also, a cooler environment is a key signal for sleep onset itself, never mind the actual quality of the sleep that follows. 5. Now, this one is probably one that most people need to try and practice more, which is avoiding alcohol as a sleep aid. Alcohol is a sedative. It might get you off to sleep faster, but it massively impacts the structure of our sleep and the quality of it. In fact, it's one of the worst things for it. It fragments our sleep cycles and also suppresses our REM sleep, which is vital for emotional and cognitive health and balance. When we're tired and don't get much REM sleep, unfortunately, this can make us very unfocused, but also very emotionally volatile. There's enough things in the day that already don't assist with that, so getting good REM sleep is a priority. And number 6, create wind down time. Allow yourself to actually settle before bed and not be on your phone and doing stimulating activities. And this also does include exercise. When we exercise, again, we raise our core body temperature and we're not settling our brain before we go to bed. So giving your brain 20 to 30 minutes to transition by doing things like meditating, reading, or stretching, something soothing and slow paced, is really going to help us to get a good night's sleep. Let your system shift out of go mode. So to summarize everything, adenosine is what builds sleep pressure in the brain. Caffeine blocks this, but only temporarily. People's sensitivity to this will vary, and this can lead to a crash, delayed melatonin secretion, and a shallower sleep. The solution isn't cancelling coffees and tea and anything with caffeine in completely, but it's just about timing and awareness. Protect your sleep and your sleep will protect you. As Matthew Walker says, sleep is the single most effective thing we can do to reset our brain and body health each day. If you found this useful, hit subscribe for science and research-backed practical solutions for everything regarding well-being, health, habits, and productivity. And thanks for watching.